The sky burned red over New York City. Commander Jack Harlow watched the live feed from the lunar base with a tight jaw and clenched fists. Another Earth Defense Fleet ship exploded in orbit, bright against the darkness of space. The alien vessels, massive angular things with glowing green engines, moved with horrible purpose. "Status report," Jack said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding on the screens around him. Lieutenant Susan Bell looked up from her console, her face pale. "It's bad, sir. Beijing has gone dark. London is under heavy bombardment. Our fleet is down to 23% operational capacity." Jack nodded slowly. The invasion had begun just 36 hours ago. The Krax Empire, a name Earth had learned only when they announced themselves and demanded immediate surrender, had appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. Their technology was decades, maybe centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. "And the Council?" Jack asked. "They've been moved to the underground facility in Colorado, but communications are spotty. Last message authorized Operation Nightfall." Susan's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's really happening." Jack took a deep breath. Operation Nightfall. The last resort. The thing they had all hoped would never be needed. Alert the medical team. Begin revival procedures. Warnings flashed across the main screen as another city fell under alien fire. Paris. The Eiffel Tower collapsed in a cloud of dust and flame. Jack turned away and walked quickly down the long corridor that led to the heart of the lunar base. Few people knew that beneath the scientific research labs and habitat modules lay a secret military installation. Even fewer knew what was kept there. The elevator needed his handprint, retinal scan, and voice authorization. As he descended deep into the moon, Jack thought about the 300 men and women waiting below. They had volunteered for a mission they hoped would never come. Now they were humanity's last hope. Dr. Kate Nelson met him at the elevator door. Her usual neat appearance had given way to rumpled clothes and messy hair. Like everyone else, she hadn't slept much since the invasion began. "We're starting the revival sequence," she said, falling into step beside him. "First group should be conscious in about 20 minutes. They walked into the cryostasis chamber, a vast room filled with rows of specialized pods. Each contained a soldier, preserved in suspended animation for the past 3 years. Not ordinary soldiers. The best of the best, enhanced with experimental technology and trained for a very specific purpose. "How long until they're combat ready?" Jack asked. 2 hours for physical readiness. The augmentations need time to fully reactivate." Kate checked her tablet. "The drop pods are being prepped now." Jack nodded. 2 hours. I hope Earth can hold on that long." A technician hurried up to them. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures. The Krax ships are changing orbit. One appears to be heading toward lunar space." Jack felt a chill. "They're looking for us. How long until they're in range?" 3 hours, maybe less." "Speed up the revival process," Jack ordered. "We need to launch before they find us." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of urgent activity. One by one, the elite soldiers awoke from their long sleep. Their bodies had been kept in perfect condition by the cryopods, muscles maintained through electrical stimulation. Each had undergone extensive modifications, neural enhancements for faster reflexes, reinforced skeletal structures, advanced healing capabilities. Lieutenant Diane Miller was the first to fully awaken. She sat up in her pod, immediately alert, her enhanced systems coming online faster than the others. Her dark hair was cut short in military style, and her eyes quickly assessed the situation around her. "Commander," she said, recognizing Jack. "Is it time?" "Yes, Lieutenant. Earth is under attack. Operation Nightfall is active." She nodded once, no surprise or fear showing on her face. They had all known this day might come. "My team?" "Being revived now. Briefing in 30 minutes. All around them, more soldiers were waking up. Sergeant Pete Collins, a stocky man with cybernetic implants visible at his temples, was already helping others out of their pods. Corporal Amy Winters was connecting to the base systems through her neural interface, her eyes distant as she downloaded the most recent battle data directly into her mind. Private Frank Rodriguez flexed his reinforced hands, the subtle machinery beneath his skin humming to life. In the briefing room, Jack stood before the assembled soldiers. The screens behind him showed the devastation on Earth. Major cities in ruins, the defense fleet reduced to scattered remnants fighting hopeless last stands. The situation is worse than our worst projections, Jack said. Conventional forces have failed. The Crack's technology is too advanced for a direct confrontation. That's where you come in. He brought up the schematics for the drop pods. Sleek, black vessels designed for a single occupant each. These pods are built with experimental stealth technology. They should get you through the Crack's detection grid. You'll drop from lunar orbit directly to predetermined landing zones across North America. From there, you'll link up with any remaining military forces and resistance groups. Your implants and training give you the edge we need for guerrilla warfare. Diane Miller stood up. Rules of engagement, sir? Whatever it takes, Lieutenant. This is an extinction-level event. If we don't stop them, humanity ends. An alarm blared through the facility. Susan's voice came over the comms. Commander, Crack's vessel approaching rapidly. They've detected us. 20 minutes until they're in weapons range. Jack looked at the soldiers before him. Humanity's last, best hope. Move out. Get to your pods. Now. The lunar hangar was massive, housing 300 black drop pods arranged in neat rows. Technicians rushed to complete final checks as the soldiers ran to their assigned vessels. Jack stood at the control station, watching the timer count. Down, the Crack ship was getting closer by the second. Sir, Susan called from the command center. You need to evacuate too. The transport to the backup facility is waiting. Jack looked at the screen showing the approaching alien vessel. It was enormous, bristling with weapons. Then he looked at the drop pods, not all of them ready yet. No, he said. I'm staying. Someone needs to make sure they all get away. But, sir, that's an order, Lieutenant Bell. Get as many personnel out as you can. I'll handle the launch sequence. On the hangar floor, Diane Miller climbed into her pod. The interior molded itself around her body, neural links connecting to her implants. Through the clear canopy, she saw other soldiers doing the same. Some pods were already moving toward the launch tubes. A voice came through her comms. Commander Harlow. Lieutenant Miller, you're now in tactical command of Operation Nightfall. Your primary objective is to disrupt Crack's command and control operations. Find their weakness, exploit it. Understood, sir. What about base evacuation? There was a pause. Don't worry about us. Just complete your mission. Diane understood what wasn't being said. She gave a crisp salute through the canopy. It's been an honor, sir. Her pod sealed completely and moved into position. Around her, dozens of others did the same, their engines humming with power. Jack Harlow stood at the main controls, override key in hand. The base shuddered as the first Crack's weapon struck the lunar surface. Launch all pods, he ordered. One by one, the drop pods shot out from the lunar base, accelerating rapidly toward the blue planet below. Each carried a single soldier, the best of humanity, falling like meteors toward the conquered Earth. As the last pod launched, Jack allowed himself a small smile. The Cracks had won the first battle, but the war wasn't over yet. The battle was lost. Then Earth's elite fell from the sky. Diane Miller's drop pod shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. The heat shield glowed red-hot, the pod's exterior reaching temperatures that would melt ordinary metal. But these pods were not made of ordinary materials. They were built with the most advanced technology humanity had developed, designed for this exact purpose. Inside the pod, Diane remained calm. Her enhanced nervous system regulated her breathing and heart rate. The neural implants fed her real-time data about the pod's trajectory, speed, and surrounding conditions. She could see the status of nearby pods too, green dots on her mental display representing her fellow soldiers. Suddenly, several dots turned yellow, then red. Warning. Crack's defense systems activated. Evasive maneuvers initiated. The pod's AI announced in a flat voice. Diane gripped the manual controls. Give me override. The pod computer transferred control to her enhanced reflexes. She could process information faster than any normal human, her augmented brain making calculations in microseconds. As energy beams from Crack's anti-air defenses cut through the sky around her. She zigzagged the pod, using the cloud cover for concealment. Not everyone was so lucky. She watched as 3 red dots vanished from her display. 3 soldiers who would never reach the ground. "Computer, broadcast to all pods," Diane ordered. "This is Lieutenant Miller. They've spotted us. Switch to secondary landing zones. I repeat, switch to secondary landing zones." The original plan called for a coordinated landing in the mountains west of what used to be Washington, D.C. But with the cracks now aware of their presence, they needed to scatter. It would make regrouping harder, but survival was the priority now. Diane's pod burst through the cloud layer. Below her stretched the ruins of what had once been Chicago. Skyscrapers lay toppled like fallen trees. Fires still burned in some districts. Crack ships patrolled the skies, their green engines leaving eerie trails in the evening sky. She aimed for Lake Michigan. The water landing would be rough, but the pod was designed for it, and it might throw off crack sensors. The impact came hard, despite the pod's shock absorbers. Diane clenched her teeth as the pod plunged beneath the dark water of the lake, sinking rapidly before its buoyancy systems activated. It rose back to the surface, the hatch opening automatically. Cold air rushed, and Diane quickly gathered her equipment: a compact rifle that could reconfigure itself for different ammunition types, a tactical knife made of an alloy that could cut through cracks armor, communication devices, and survival gear. She slipped into the water and began swimming toward the shore, the pod self-destructing behind her with a muffled underwater explosion. No evidence would remain for the cracks to study. The shoreline was unrecognizable from the Chicago she remembered. Broken concrete and twisted metal replaced the once beautiful lakefront. Diane used her enhanced vision to scan for movement, detecting nothing but debris shifting in the wind. She found cover in the shell of a collapsed building and checked her secure comm unit. The signal was weak, but she received fragmented status, reports from other soldiers. Pete Collins had landed somewhere in Pennsylvania. Amy Winters was trying to establish a communications network from her landing site in Ohio. Frank Rodriguez was reporting heavy cracks activity in what used to be Indianapolis. They were scattered across hundreds of miles. The plan to regroup quickly had failed. Diane was calculating her next move when she heard something, a subtle sound that her enhanced hearing picked up clearly. Someone was moving nearby, trying to stay quiet, but breathing heavily. Not a cracks. Their breathing was distinctive, more like a hiss. "I know you're there," Diane called out, her rifle ready. "Show yourself slowly." A man emerged from behind a fallen concrete pillar, hands raised. He was thin, with a beard and dirty clothes. Behind him, 3 more people appeared. 2 women and another man, all looking equally ragged. Are you really from Earth Defense?" the bearded man asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We saw your pod come down. Thought maybe it was a trick." Diane lowered her weapon slightly. "Lieutenant Diane Miller, Orbital Drop Tactical. Force. Who are you?" Ben Harper. This is my sister Lisa, and our friends Judy and Kyle. We're part of the Chicago Resistance." He gestured around them. "What's left of it anyway?" Lisa stepped forward, hope visible on her dirt-streaked face. "Is it true? Is Earth sending help?" Diane hesitated. These people needed hope, but they also needed truth. Earth Defense Fleet is gone. The government is in hiding or destroyed. I'm part of a special forces unit deployed from the lunar base before it fell. There are about 300 of us, scattered across the country now. Their faces fell, but Ben nodded grimly. "At least you're here. That's more than we had yesterday. We have a hideout. Others are there too. 23 of us total." "Take me there," Diane said. The hideout was the basement of an old hospital, reinforced with scavenged materials. The survivors had created a surprisingly functional base with sleeping areas, a makeshift medical station, and even a communications setup using salvaged equipment. As they entered, people stared at Diane, with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Her combat suit and weapons were unlike anything they had seen. One woman approached, older than the others, with gray streaks in her dark hair and the confident posture of someone used to giving orders. "I'm Rita Vasquez," she said. I was a police captain before the invasion. Now I keep these people alive. Ben says you're military? Diane explained the ODTF mission briefly. Rita listened intently, her expression thoughtful. 300 super soldiers against the entire Cracks force, Rita said when Diane finished. Those aren't good odds. We don't need good odds, Diane replied. We just need a chance. My team was designed for asymmetric warfare. We have technology and capabilities that can give us an edge. To demonstrate, Diane activated her neural interface, connecting to the survivors' communications equipment. The crude radio they had built suddenly picked up signals it couldn't before, including Cracks transmissions. With your local knowledge and our capabilities, we can start hitting them where it hurts, Diane said. But first, I need to contact the other ODTF members. Rita nodded slowly. Kyle was an engineer before all this. He might be able to help boost your signal. While Kyle worked on the communications, Diane studied the maps the survivors had drawn of Cracks patrol routes and facilities. They had identified a small Cracks outpost just 2 miles away, used as a relay station for their communications. That's our first target, Diane decided. We take it out, create confusion in their network, and use their own equipment to broadcast. A stronger signal to my team. The survivors exchanged nervous glances. We've never attacked them directly, Ben said. Just survived. Stayed hidden. Diane looked at each of them. That changes tonight. The Cracks think they've won. They think humanity is beaten. We're going to show them how wrong they are. Night fell over the ruined city. Diane led a small team, Ben, Rita, and 2 others who had military experience before the invasion. They moved silently through the debris-filled streets, avoiding Cracks patrols with the help of Diane's enhanced senses. The Cracks outpost was a small structure, all angles and glowing green lights. 2 alien guards stood at the entrance, tall insect-like creatures with 4 arms and biomechanical armor. Diane readied her weapon, switching it to silent mode. The experimental rifle made barely a whisper as it fired, dropping both guards, before they could react. Move fast, she whispered to the others. We have 5 minutes before the next patrol comes by. They rushed the building, Diane taking point. Inside, 3 more Cracks turned in surprise. Her enhanced reflexes let her take down 2 before they could reach their weapons. The third managed to raise an alarm before Rita shot it with a scavenged alien gun. Time's up, Diane said, quickly moving to the communications array. Defend the entrance, I need 2 minutes. As Rita and the others took up defensive positions, Diane connected her neural interface to the alien technology. The implants in her brain worked to decrypt and repurpose the Cracks systems. Outside energy weapons fired as a Cracks patrol approached. Ben shouted a warning. Diane worked faster, sending out a coded burst transmission to all ODTF frequencies. A simple message. The drop was scattered, establishing resistance cells in all landing zones. Phase 2 begins now. Find local allies. Target Cracks command and control. We are not beaten. She downloaded what data she could from the Cracks system, then planted the explosive charges they had brought. Fall back, she ordered as the shooting outside intensified. They retreated through a back exit, running hard as the Cracks reinforcements closed in. When they were half a mile away, Diane triggered the detonator. The night sky lit up as the Cracks outpost exploded. The blast would be visible for miles, a beacon of defiance in the conquered city. That, Diane said to her shocked companions, is how we start fighting back. Sergeant Pete Collins crouched behind the burned shell of an overturned truck. His cybernetic implants hummed softly as they enhanced his vision, allowing him to see clearly in the darkness. He was in what used to be a small town in rural Pennsylvania. The Cracks had established some kind of processing facility here. Large machines drilled into the earth, extracting something that glowed faintly blue. Pete had landed 40 miles away 2 days ago. His drop pod had been hit during descent, forcing him to eject early and parachute down. The landing had been rough, but his reinforced bones and enhanced healing had prevented any serious injury. He had made his way here on foot, following strange energy readings his implants detected. Now he watched as alien workers moved around the facility. Their insect-like bodies were efficient, forearms allowing them to operate complex machinery with ease. Pete counted 8 guards with energy weapons patrolling the perimeter. His comm unit buzzed softly. A coded message from Lieutenant Miller had come through. The other ODTF members were scattered but alive, establishing resistance cells where they had landed. Phase 2 was now active. Target cracks command and control systems. Pete smiled grimly. He had already found his first target. A sound behind him made him spin around, weapon ready. A young woman stood there, hands raised. She wore dirty clothes and carried a makeshift spear. "Don't shoot," she whispered. "I'm human." Pete lowered his weapon. "Sergeant Pete Collins, Orbital Drop Tactical Force. What's your name?" "Gina." "Gina. Ward." She eyed his military gear and implants with curiosity. "You're one of them, aren't you? The soldiers that fell from the sky. Word's been spreading on the emergency radio channels." "Word spreads fast," Pete said. "Are there others with you?" Gina nodded. "A small group. We hide in the old mine tunnels. The aliens don't go down there. Something about the rocks interferes with their tech." She pointed to the facility. "They've been digging for weeks, taking something out of the ground." Pete's enhanced eyes zoomed in on the blue material being extracted. His implants analyzed what he was seeing. "It's a rare earth element. They're mining it, probably for their weapons and ships." "Come with me," Gina said. "Our leader will want to meet you." The mine tunnels ran deep beneath the hills. Pete followed Gina through narrow passages until they opened into a larger cavern. About 30 people had made a home here, with supplies, bedding, and even a small power generator. They looked up. As Pete entered, their faces showing a mixture of fear and hope. An older man with a gray beard stepped forward. "I'm Carl Evans. I was the mayor of Hillbrook before these things came." "Gina says you're military?" Pete briefly explained the ODTF mission. As he spoke, he noticed someone working on what looked like homemade explosives in the corner of the cavern. "That's Sam," Carl said, following Pete's gaze. "He worked in mining, knows his way around explosives." Pete walked over to Sam, examining his work. The man had talent but lacked proper materials. "I can help with that," Pete said. "My specialty is demolitions, and I have these." He opened a compartment in his tactical gear, revealing compact explosive charges more advanced than anything the survivors had seen. "With these and my implants, I can cause some serious damage to that mining operation," Pete explained. "But I'll need help getting close enough to plant them." Carl nodded slowly. "We know the terrain. There are old maintenance tunnels that run near the facility. The aliens haven't found them all yet." "Then we have work to do," Pete said, while Sam and Pete modified the explosives, combining Pete's advanced charges with Sam's knowledge of the local mining operations. Gina showed Pete a crude map they had drawn of the cracks facility. "They have a central control building here," she pointed, "and power generators here and here. The main extraction equipment is in this area." Pete's cybernetic implants scanned the map, creating a 3D model in his mind. "If we hit the power generators first, then the control building, we can cause a chain reaction. When their systems try to compensate, the extraction equipment will overload." "How many people do you need?" Carl asked. "Just 3. Any more increases the risk of detection. Me, Sam, and one guide who knows the tunnels best." Gina stepped forward. "That would be me." They moved out at dawn, using the old maintenance tunnels to approach the facility from below. Pete's enhanced strength allowed him to carry all the explosives. Sam brought tools and detonators. Gina led the way, moving silently through passages she knew by heart. "Stop," Gina whispered, holding up her hand. "There's a patrol above us." Pete activated his audio enhancers, listening to the heavy footsteps of cracks guards moving overhead. After they passed, the group continued until they reached a rusty ladder leading up to a hatch. "This opens into a drainage area behind the power generators," Gina explained. Pete climbed up first, carefully pushing open the hatch. The cracks facility sprawled before him with tall, angular structures glowing with green energy. Workers and guards moved about, focused on the mining operation. "Stay close," Pete whispered as the others joined him. "We move fast and quiet. They darted from cover to cover using the massive machinery as concealment. When a guard approached, Pete's enhanced reflexes allowed him to time their movements perfectly, avoiding detection. At the first power generator, Pete placed a modified explosive while Sam connected it to the generator's main power conduit. Gina kept watch, signaling when it was clear to move to the next target. They hit the second generator the same way, then made their way toward the central control building. This was the most heavily guarded area. 2 crack soldiers stood at each entrance, their multiple eyes scanning constantly. "We can't get close enough," Sam whispered. Pete studied the building, his implants analyzing its structure. "We don't need to. See that conduit running from the generator to the control center? We can place the last charge there. When the generators blow, the power surge will travel along the conduit and hit the control systems." They placed the final explosive and began their retreat back to the maintenance tunnels. They were halfway there when an alarm blared across the facility. A crack's voice echoed through speakers in their alien language. "They've spotted the charges," Pete said. "Run!" They sprinted for the hatch, but a patrol of crack soldiers appeared, cutting off their escape route. Pete pushed Gina and Sam behind a large piece of equipment. "Get to the tunnels, I'll draw them off," Pete said, activating his combat implants. His muscles tensed as the cybernetic enhancements kicked in, flooding his system with enhanced strength and speed. Before they could argue, Pete leapt out from cover, firing his weapon at the Crack's patrol. The aliens turned toward him, energy weapons charging. Pete darted between machinery, drawing them away from his companions. When he was sure Gina and Sam had reached the hatch, Pete activated his neural trigger. The explosives detonated in sequence. The first generator exploded in a ball of blue flame. The second followed seconds later. The power surge raced along the conduits, hitting the control center. The chain reaction was more powerful than even Pete had calculated. The entire extraction system began to overload. Blue energy crackling wildly through the machinery. Crack's workers ran in panic as equipment exploded around them. Pete used the chaos to make his way back to the maintenance tunnels, dodging falling debris and energy discharges. He found Gina and Sam waiting anxiously at the bottom of the ladder. "I thought you weren't coming back," Gina said. Pete grinned. "Never leave a job half done." They felt the ground shake as the facility continued to collapse above them. By the time they returned to the mine cavern, they could see a massive plume of smoke rising in the distance. "That's one Crack's operation that won't be mining Earth resources anymore," Pete said. As the survivors celebrated, Pete's comm unit activated. A message from Corporal Amy Winters was coming through. She had established a communications network in Ohio and was picking up Crack's transmissions from all over the eastern United States. "The Cracks are panicking," Pete told the group after reading the message. "Our attacks are working. They're pulling forces from other areas to protect their main command center." "Where is that?" Carl asked. "Washington, D.C., Pete replied. "And that's where we need to go next. Lieutenant Miller is gathering forces to strike at their heart." The survivors looked at each other, fear and determination in their eyes. "We're with you," Gina said. "All of us." Pete nodded. "Then pack up. We move at nightfall. The Cracks took our world, but now they'll learn why that was a mistake." Corporal Amy Winters sat perfectly still, her eyes closed. To anyone watching, she might have appeared to be sleeping. In reality, her mind was far away, traveling through invisible waves of data. The neural interface implanted in her brain allowed her to connect directly with electronic systems. Right now, she was deep inside the Crack's communication network. Amy had landed in the rural outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Her pod had touched down in a cornfield, undamaged and undetected. She had quickly found an abandoned radio station and set up her equipment there. It was the perfect location for her specialized skills. Through her neural connection, Amy could see the Crack's communications as streams of light and color. Their language was alien, but her enhanced brain processed and translated it. She had spent the past 3 days mapping their network, understanding its structure, finding its weaknesses. What she discovered was surprising. The Cracks were not the independent beings they appeared to be. They functioned more like parts of a whole, connected to a central intelligence. Their ships, weapons, and even their individual soldiers all linked back to command centers. The largest of these was in Washington, D.C. Amy's consciousness returned to her body as she opened her eyes. The small group of survivors who had joined her watched anxiously. There were only 6 of them, former radio operators and tech specialists who had found her through emergency broadcasts. "I've mapped their entire Eastern communication grid," Amy said. "And I found something important. The cracks are a hive mind. They need constant connection to their command structure. When that connection is broken, they become confused, less effective." Joe, a former military radio operator, leaned forward. "So if we cut off their communications, we cut off their coordination," Amy finished. "Exactly." She brought up a holographic map using her portable equipment. Red dots appeared across the eastern United States, connected by lines of light. These are their main communication relays. If we can disrupt enough of them simultaneously, we can isolate the Washington Command Center. That's when the main assault can hit them. "How do we coordinate something that big?" asked Mia, a college student who had been studying computer science. Before the invasion, Amy smiled. "That's where the rest of my team comes in. I've been receiving reports from other ODTF members. Lieutenant Miller in Chicago, Sergeant Collins in Pennsylvania, Private Rodriguez in Indianapolis. They're all gathering forces, preparing to move on Washington." "And us? What do we do?" Joe asked. "We become their eyes and ears," Amy said, "and their voice." Over the next 24 hours, Amy worked tirelessly with her small team. Using parts salvaged from the radio station and components from her drop pod, they built a transmission system that could pierce through cracks' communication blocks. Amy's neural interface allowed her to encrypt their messages in ways the cracks couldn't detect. She established contact with resistance groups across the country, sharing information about cracks' movements and weaknesses. Reports came in from everywhere. Lieutenant Miller had rallied survivors in Chicago and was moving east, gathering more fighters as she went. Sergeant Collins had destroyed a major mining operation in Pennsylvania and was heading toward the capital with his own group. Private Rodriguez had taken out a cracks patrol base in Indianapolis and freed human prisoners who were eager to join the fight. All across the country, the scattered ODTF soldiers were becoming rallying points for human resistance. What had been isolated groups of survivors were becoming an organized force. "We need to know exactly what we're facing in Washington," Amy said to her team. "I'm going to go deeper into their network." "Is that safe?" Mia asked. "Won't they detect you?" "It's risky," Amy admitted. "But we need this information." She closed her eyes again, her consciousness extending into the cracks network. This time she pushed further, following the data streams back to their source. The Washington Command Center was heavily protected by digital barriers, but Amy's enhanced systems found small gaps, places where she could slip through undetected. Inside the cracks' central network, she discovered their plans. The aliens weren't just conquering Earth, they were preparing it for colonization. They were altering the atmosphere, changing the chemical composition to better suit their biology. If they succeeded, the air would become toxic to humans within months, but she also found their weakness. The command center housed a central node, a physical structure that coordinated the entire hive mind. If it was destroyed, the cracks would lose their unified consciousness. They would still be dangerous, but they would be individuals, not a coordinated force. As Amy explored deeper, she felt a shift in the data flows. Something had detected her presence. The cracks' security systems were locking onto her neural signature. She tried to withdraw, but it was too late. Alien code attacked her mind, causing searing pain. Amy cried out, her body convulsing. Joe and Mia rushed to her side, not knowing how to help as she fought a battle inside her own brain. Amy's training kicked in. Her enhanced neural pathways created firewalls, defensive barriers against the attack. She couldn't retreat, so she would have to fight through. With a tremendous mental effort, she pushed back against the crack system, using her connection to plant a virus of her own creation. It wasn't meant to destroy, just to distract. The alien Security protocols turned their attention to the virus, giving Amy the seconds she needed to sever the connection. She gasped as her consciousness slammed back into her body. Blood trickled from her nose and her hands trembled. "Amy, are you okay?" Mia asked, her face pale with worry. Amy nodded weakly. "I got what we needed, but they know we're in their systems now. They'll be looking for us." As if to confirm her words, they heard the distant whine of crack scout ships approaching the radio station. "We need to move, now," Joe said, already gathering their essential equipment. They barely made it out before the first energy blasts hit the building. From the cover of nearby woods, they watched as the radio station was reduced to smoking rubble. "All our equipment," Mia said in despair. Amy tapped the side of her head. "The most important equipment is still right here. I have everything we need." They traveled on foot through the night, avoiding roads and open areas where Crack's patrols might spot them. By dawn, they had reached an abandoned farm 20 miles away. As the others rested, Amy used a small backup transmitter to send a coded message to all ODTF frequencies. She shared what she had learned about the Washington Command Center and the Central Node. Lieutenant Miller's response came within hours. Forces were converging from all directions. The attack on Washington would happen in 3 days. All resistance cells were to target communication relays at exactly the same time, creating a diversion and communications blackout. "We have 3 days to reach the rendezvous point," Amy told her team. "Lieutenant Miller needs me there to coordinate the final assault. That's over 200 miles away," Joe said, "through Crack's controlled territory." "Then we better start walking," Amy replied with a determined smile. They set out as the sun began to set. Ahead lay danger and uncertainty, but also purpose. For the first time since the invasion, humanity was no longer just surviving. They were fighting back. In cities and towns across America, the word spread from one resistance group to another. The elite soldiers who fell from the sky were gathering, an army. The battle for Earth was about to enter its final phase. Private Frank Rodriguez crouched at the edge of the forest, his enhanced vision focused on the ruins of Washington, D.C. What had once been the capital of the United States was now the central command for the Crack's invasion. The Washington Monument stood broken in half. The Capitol building was partially collapsed, and in the center of the National Mall rose an alien structure, a massive tower of black metal and green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Frank's reinforced body had served him well since the drop. He had landed near Indianapolis and immediately found himself in the middle of a Crack's processing camp. Humans were being sorted, some taken for labor, others for study. Frank had freed over 50 prisoners in his first day on Earth, his heavy weapons cutting through alien defenses with devastating efficiency. Now, 3 weeks later, he had led those same freed prisoners across 3 states to reach this point. They had gathered more fighters along the way, joining with other resistance groups. What had started as a desperate band of survivors had become a small army. "They're coming," said a voice behind him. Frank turned to see Alice, a former nurse who had become his second in command. She pointed to the west. In the distance, Frank could make out a large group approaching through the remains of the suburbs. Lieutenant Miller's forces from Chicago had arrived. To the north, another group appeared, Sergeant Collins with his Pennsylvania fighters. And from the south came Corporal Winters and her Ohio team. The scattered ODTF soldiers were converging, bringing with them hundreds of humans ready to fight for their world. Lieutenant Miller reached Frank's position first. She looked different from when he had last seen her on the lunar base, leaner, harder, with new scars on her face. But her eyes held the same determination. "Private," she greeted him. "Good to see you made it." "Never doubted I would, Lieutenant," Frank replied with a grin. "Brought some friends too." Miller nodded approvingly at the fighters assembled behind him. "We'll need every one of them." As Collins and Winters arrived with their groups, the 4 ODTF soldiers gathered to finalize their plan. Around them, the human fighters prepared weapons, checked equipment, and steeled themselves for what was to come. "The central node is here," Amy said, projecting a holographic image from her neural interface. The image showed the interior of the alien tower. "It's the brain of their hive mind. Destroy it and their entire command structure falls apart." "Defenses?" Miller asked. Heavy, Collins replied. I scouted the perimeter yesterday. At least 200 cracks guards, energy barriers, and automated weapon systems. We'll need a diversion, Miller said. Something big enough to draw most of their forces away from the tower. Frank stepped forward. That's where my team comes in. We hit their landing pads first, target their ships, make them think the main attack is coming from the west. Miller nodded. Collins, your demolition skills will be needed to breach the tower's outer defenses. Winters, you'll need to get inside and use your neural interface to bypass their security systems. And you? Collins asked. Miller's face was grim. I'll take a small team to the central node itself. Once Winters gets us inside, we plant these. She held up a set of advanced explosives, the last ones they had from the lunar base. High energy, charges designed specifically to disrupt their technology. The plan set, they rejoined their fighters. The combined force numbered nearly 500 humans, a small number against the cracks, but they had surprise, determination, and the 4 enhanced soldiers to lead them. Miller addressed them all, her voice carrying across the makeshift camp. Tomorrow we take back our world. Not just for us, but for every human who didn't survive to see this day. The cracks think they've conquered Earth. They're about to learn they've only awakened it. Dawn broke over the ruins of Washington. The humans moved into position under cover of early morning fog. Frank led his team west, carrying the heaviest weapons they had salvaged from cracks patrols. At exactly 700 hours, the attack began. Frank's group hit the landing pads with salvaged cracks explosives. The alien ships erupted in green flame, secondary explosions cascading through their ranks. Alarms blared across the cracks compound. Guards rushed toward the burning ships, exactly as planned. On the eastern side, Collins led his team through the gap in the cracks' defenses. They encountered resistance, a squad of cracks soldiers with energy weapons. Collins moved with enhanced speed, his cybernetic systems allowing him to dodge energy blasts while placing precisely targeted shots. When they reached the outer wall of the tower, Collins placed his demolition charges at the weak points he had identified. The explosion carved a hole large enough for Winters and Miller to lead their teams inside. The interior of the tower was alien and disorienting, corridors that seemed to shift and change, lighting that hurt human eyes, and a constant, low hum that made teeth ache. But Winters connected to the systems with her neural interface, guiding them through the labyrinth. This way, she said, her eyes glowing faintly as her implants worked. The central chamber is 3 levels up. They fought their way upward, losing people with each encounter. The cracks inside the tower were different, larger, more intelligent. Clearly the leadership caste. They fought with desperate intensity, sensing the threat to their command structure. Frank's diversion continued outside, keeping the bulk of the cracks' forces occupied. Collins held the breach point, ensuring their escape route remained open. Winters led the way through the tower's defenses, her mind battling crack security systems even as her body fought alongside the others. Finally, Miller and a handful of survivors reached the central chamber. Inside was a pulsing green crystal structure that towered from floor to ceiling. Energy flowed from it in visible waves, connecting to terminals around the room. That's it, Winters said, her voice strained from the effort of maintaining her neural connection. The central node, the heart of their hive mind. Cracks commanders rushed into the chamber, their weapons charging. The humans took cover, returning fire. Miller worked her way around the edge of the room, placing explosives. At the base of the crystal structure, "Cover me," she shouted as she moved to place the final charge. An energy blast caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. She fell to one knee but continued forward, her enhanced body pushing through the pain. Frank saw her struggling and made his decision. He burst from cover, his heavy weapon blazing, drawing the cracks' fire away from Miller. Energy blast hit him in the chest and leg, but his reinforced body absorbed the damage as he continued firing. Miller reached the final position and placed the last explosive. "Charge is set. Everyone out now." The surviving humans retreated, Winters guiding them back toward the breach point where Collins waited. Frank provided cover fire, his weapon never stopping despite his injuries. Miller was the last to leave the chamber. She looked back at Frank, who had taken position by the door. "Go, Lieutenant," he said. "I'll hold them here." Miller hesitated, then nodded once. She understood what had to be done. "Earth won't forget, Private." "Just make sure it's worth it," Frank replied with a final grin. Miller raced to join the others. Frank remained, holding back the Crack's commanders as they tried to pursue. When his weapon finally ran dry, he drew the detonator from his pocket. Outside, the surviving humans had cleared the tower. Collins was helping the wounded toward the forest. Winters was using her neural interface to jam Crack's communications. Miller looked back at the tower, counting seconds. The explosion was unlike anything they had seen before. The tower didn't simply collapse. It disintegrated from within. Green energy burst outward in a shockwave, washing over the entire Crack's compound. The effect was immediate and stunning. Across the battlefield, Crack's soldiers stopped fighting. Some dropped their weapons in confusion. Others simply stood motionless, as if they had forgotten what they were doing. "It worked," Winters said, her neural interface showing her what was happening. "The hive mind is shattered. They're individuals now, disconnected." In the days that followed, humans emerged from hiding all across the country, then the world. The Cracks, without their central coordination, were no longer an overwhelming force. Many retreated to their remaining ships and fled Earth. Others were captured or killed. 1 month after the Battle of Washington, Lieutenant Miller stood on a hill overlooking the recovering city. Beside her stood Collins and Winters, the surviving ODTF soldiers. "Do you think they'll come back?" Collins asked. Miller looked up at the sky, now clear of alien ships. "Probably, but next time, we'll be ready." Winters nodded. "And we won't be alone." Other ODTF members survived across the world. "We're already getting reports from Europe, Asia, Australia. The fight was global." "Then we rebuild," Miller said. "We learn from their technology. We prepare." In the distance, construction teams were clearing rubble, setting the foundation for new buildings. The Washington Monument was being repaired, a symbol of humanity's resilience. The battle had been lost. Earth had fallen, but its elite had descended from the sky, and humanity had risen again.